Timothy Snyder, Glen Loury, Robert Sapolsky, Daniel Kahneman, Nick Bostrom, David Krakauer, and Max Tegmark. The book covers a wide range of concerns: consciousness, the foundations of knowledge, ethics, artificial intelligence, politics, physics, decision-making, racism, violence, existential risk, but it is heavily weighted toward questions about the nature of mind and how minds like ours can best create a world worth living in. As listeners to Making Sense know, these are my core interests, and I return to them often. I have long believed in the ultimate unity of knowledge, and thus that the boundaries between traditional disciplines should be generally ignored. One thing we surely know about reality at this point is that it isn't partitioned like a university campus. I also believe that most of the evil in our world, all the needless misery we manufacture for one another, is the product not of what bad people do, but of what good people do once in the grip of bad ideas. Taken together, these principles suggest that there's no telling how much moral progress we might make by removing the impediments to clear thinking on any topic that interests us. For instance, as I write these lines, the world is still struggling to understand the gravity of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has now spread to 187 countries. Political, philosophical, religious, and economic beliefs now contend with the basic principles of epidemiology in the brains of millions of people, some of whom are responsible for making and enforcing policies that will affect the lives of billions. There is still no consensus on how societies should respond to this crisis, and factions have formed on the basis of entirely different views of terrestrial reality. Has the danger of this disease been exaggerated for political gain? Is it unethical to force businesses to close and people to stay indoors in an effort to slow the contagion? Do governments have a responsibility to provide free health care to their citizens? Should the Chinese be admonished to stop eating bats, or would that be a sign of racism? Where is the boundary between contrarian thinking and deadly misinformation? Everywhere one looks, one sees the ruins of failed epistemology, and bad ideas are getting people killed. There are now nearly 1 million different podcasts to choose from. Many give voice to the general pugnacity of our age, and my own podcast has not been entirely immune. But the antidote to bad conversations is always better ones, and here I present some of the most satisfying conversations I've ever had. Enjoy. Sam Harris, May 6th, 2020, Los Angeles. The Light of the Mind. A conversation with David Chalmers. Trying to understand consciousness has long been a foundational interest of mine, and given his role in sparking that interest, I begin making sense with David Chalmers. A philosopher at New York University and at the Australian National University, Chalmers is also a co-director of the Center for Mind, Brain, and Consciousness. We spend most of our time discussing the nature of consciousness and why it is so difficult to understand scientifically. We begin with Chalmers' notion of the hard problem of consciousness, a phrase that has influenced every debate on the subject since the early 1990s. We also talk about artificial intelligence, the possibility that the universe is a simulation, and other fascinating topics, some of which may seem impossibly distant from the concerns of everyday life. But I would urge you to not be misled here. All of these topics will become more and more relevant as we continue to build technology that, whether conscious or not, will seem conscious to us. And as we confront the prospect of augmenting our own minds by integrating devices directly into our brains, all of these philosophical puzzles will become matters of immediate personal and ethical concern. You served quite an important intellectual role in my life. I went to one of those early Tucson conferences on consciousness.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it was probably 95. Was 94 the first one?
Yeah, 94 was the first small one with about 300 people. Then it got really big in 96 with about 2,000 people.
I think I went to 95 and probably 96 as well. And I had dropped out of school and was, I guess you could say, looking for some direction in life. And I became very interested in the conversations that were happening in the philosophy of mind. I think probably the first thing I saw was some of the sparring between Dan Dennett and John Searle. Then I noticed you in the Journal of Consciousness Studies. And then I think I just saw an ad, probably in the Journal of Consciousness Studies, for the Tucson conference, and showed up and I quite distinctly...